Good morning. It is Wednesday, February 10th. I'm Jason Stanton. I serve as senior pastor at First Lutheran in Onalaska, Wisconsin. And I've been thinking about cold unavoidably. If you're going to live in Wisconsin, at some point during the winter, it's going to be cold. Not every winter does it get to be 30 below Fahrenheit, as it did Tuesday night in Sparta, for example, that isn't far away from here. That's really cold. And I'm always astounded actually at feeling that cold on my skin and in my nose. It's actually interesting to think, is that pain? Like, does that hurt? And eventually, yes, it does if you expose yourself long enough to it. But for the 10 seconds typically that I take to run from my kitchen into the van and start it up so that when I come back to it 10 minutes later, it's not 30 below. In those few seconds, is it just uncomfortable? Is it pain? I know it's a dangerous level of cold if I'm out in it for any period of time. And so that, of course, makes me really grateful for my furnace. It also makes my heart break for those who are homeless. I wonder how does this work for people who didn't find a place to be warm? As I've been thinking about the cold this time around, I've been going a bit deeper. Not just literal cold on my skin or in my lungs, but how cold feels as I may be out in it to ski or to go for a walk or for whatever reason that I'm out in it. Cold feels quiet as compared to an 80-degree summer day. Cold feels distant. As I imagine cold in my mind, I sense a level of aloneness. Cold feels hard, like difficult. It feels slow to me. It feels still. I have this view of trees out this window, and there's plenty of breeze in the winter too, but it's amazing how still it sometimes looks outside. Fields are dormant in the cold. Birds are not completely absent, but far fewer birds in the winter. Animals are asleep. Many hibernate this time of year. And humans, of course, retreat. That's where cabin fever comes from, right? Is the cold that pushes us inside. COVID time has felt like a long, cold snap. Quieter, slower, far more still. Almost like a dormant period, a retreat from the whirlwind of 21st century life, with the promise of when this period is done, it feels like we're going to explode into all the things we used to do and then some. I've heard people talk about the roaring 20s of the 20th century, which of course came after the flu epidemic of 18, 19, and 20, and that the decade after was just an explosion of all kinds of activity. But we're still in the midst of it. And so I've just been wondering, how do we stay warm? How do you stay warm? What warms you, not just literally, sitting by a fire with something warm to drink? That might be the most cozy, warmth-giving thing I can think of on a below zero day. But in this COVID time that feels like a cold snap, a very long cold snap, what keeps you from freezing up? Your soul. How does it still glow with the light of Christ? How do you feel that warmth of Jesus. In my family, we've talked about LFTs, which is a phrase borrowed from Brene Brown, looking forward tos. What is it that we can look forward to? That keeps us warm, despite the separation and stillness and dormancy of this moment. Worship, for me, is something that keeps the light of Christ bright in my soul. Good food. We have, as a family, learned to bake bread and make lots of homemade stuff that we didn't before. My prayer life is something that, as much as the bread and good food, my prayer life has sustained and fed my soul. And then I've rediscovered, this has always been known to me, but reading, poetry, any way to engage my imagination, even down to the shows I'm watching on Netflix. And I could list probably 8 other subscription services that over the last year I've at least tried out. Story, whether it be the Marvel series on Disney Plus or Battlestar Galactica that I'm watching on Peacock. All the different stories in my life spark my imagination and keep me warm, and not just dwelling on that which is not happening in this still moment. I read a poem about the cold. I thought I'd share it with you. Cold and the colors of cold, mineral, shell, and burning blue. The sky is on fire with blue, and wind keeps ringing the fire bell. I'm caught up into a chill as high as creaking glaciers and powder-plumed peaks and the absolutes of interstellar sky. Abstract, impersonal, metaphysical, pure, this dazzling art derides me. How should warm breath dare to exist, exalt, endure? Under the glaring and sardonic sun, behind the icicles and double glass, I huddle, hoard, hold out, hold on, hold on. That's Cold by Robert Francis. And so in the midst of below zero cold and in the midst of hopefully this last chapter of the COVID time of our lives, we hold out and hold on to keep faith alive.